Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This is a special session of the Colorado Court of Appeals. We meet this afternoon to invest and to welcome the newest member of our court, Lino Lipinsky de Orlov. My name is Steve Bernard, and I am the Chief Judge of the Colorado Court of Appeals. Although newly minted, I assume my responsibilities on the 27th of December of last year. I have the privilege to serve on this court with these talented and dedicated individuals sitting to my right and left and behind me. Let me introduce them to you. Judge Daniel Taubman, Judge John Daly, Judge John Webb, Judge Robert Hawthorne, Judge Gilbert Roman, who is my Deputy Chief Judge, Judge David Furman, Judge Diana Terry, Judge David Richmond, Judge Terry Fox, Judge Stephanie Dunn, Judge Anthony Navarro, Judge Karen Ashby, Judge Michael Berger, Judge Rebecca Freyre, Judge Elizabeth Harris, Judge Craig Welling, Judge Ted Tao, and Judge Matthew Grove. Our colleague, Judge Jerry Jones, could not be here today to participate in this ceremony, but on his behalf and on behalf of the entire court, I welcome you all. Before I introduce some of the very special people and honored guests who have come here today to witness and to be a part of this important event in Lino's life, let me share a bit of history and a few thoughts about the Colorado Court of Appeals. Our Court of Appeals has been created, disbanded, and created again periodically since 1891 in response to an ever-increasing volume of appellate cases. In an odd quirk of family history, my great-grandmother's husband served on the Court of Appeals in 1915. The current Court of Appeals was created almost 50 years ago. At that time, there were only 6 judges who officed in the old Farmers Union building at 15th and Sherman Street, and they heard their oral arguments in the old Supreme Court chambers across the street in the state capitol. Eventually, in 1977, the Court of Appeals with the Supreme Court moved to a courthouse on this very location. It was a brand new building, it is true, but from the very onset, it was fraught with problems. Budget, design, construction, and otherwise, including, by the way, a leak in the roof so that water dripped down right over the podium where counsel argued in the Court of Appeals courtroom. And one of the responses of that was to create this Rube Goldberg arrangement of tarps and pipes and buckets, so during oral argument, it sounded like it was raining inside. And then, a little over 6 years ago, in mid-December 2012, we moved into this lovely building, the Ralph L. Carr Judicial Center. And here we are in January 2019, now 22 of us, all settled in a beautiful, thoughtfully designed, well-constructed home. By the way, for those of you in the audience who are visiting the Ralph Carr Center for the very first time, I encourage you, if you haven't done so already, to take a few minutes to explore the public areas in the entire complex, including the many pieces of public art and, of course, the one-of-a-kind, and I mean one-of-a-kind, Judicial Learning Center on the first floor of this building. Now, if I may, I would like to turn to introducing our honored guests. As I introduce you, I'd ask each guest to please wave or to stand up so that we can see where you are. But I would also ask the audience if you would please withhold your applause and recognition of our honored guests until all of them have been introduced. First, from the Colorado Supreme Court, we are honored to have Justice Brian Boatwright, Justice Will Hood, Justice Richard Gabriel, Justice Melissa Hart, Justice Carlos Samur, and Chief Justice Ben Coates and Justice Monica Marquez are unable to join us today. I am also pleased to recognize 2 former chief judges of this court, the Colorado Court of Appeals, Senior Judge Janice Davidson, and my immediate predecessor and mentor, Judge Alan Loeb. We also have several former and/or senior judges of the Colorado Court of Appeals with us. First of all, our senior judges, Judge Bob Kapelke, Judge Jim Casebold, and Judge Lorenzo Marquez. We also have two former judges with us, former Judge Steve Briggs and former Judge Nancy Lichtenstein. Next, I am pleased to welcome from the District Court in Colorado's 17th Judicial District, Judge Emily Anderson. Judge Anderson, are you here? I don't see her. We also, and that's certainly understandable considering the weather outside. We also have with us the former Chief Judge of the 5th Judicial District and a former President of the Colorado Bar Association, Terry Ruckriegel. Terry? Ah, the weather caught him too. How about Bill Lucero, the presiding disciplinary judge? Is he here today? 0 for 3. From the 10th Circuit Court of Appeals, we have Chief Judge Tim Timkovich, Judge Carlos Lucero, and Judge Allison Ide, whom I'm sure you all know is a former justice of our Colorado State Supreme Court. From the United States District Court for the District of Colorado, we have Judge Christine Arguello. Is Judge Arguello here? No? Is Judge Raymond Moore here? Yes, he is. Senior Judge and former Chief Judge Wiley Daniel. Judge Daniel is not here. How about Magistrate Kristen Mix? Magistrate Mix is not here. And retired Magistrate Michael Watanabe? Nope. How about Judge Patrick Augustin of the Denver Occupational Safety and Health Review Commission? Is he here? There we are. And has Colorado Attorney General Phil Weiser joined us today? I don't see the Attorney General. From the United States House of Representatives, we have Congresswoman Diana DeGette, who, as most of you know, is Lino's wife, and who will play a role later in this ceremony. Is Congressman Ed Perlmutter here today? I don't see him. I just note that Congressman Perlmutter and I went to law school together, and we recently both went to our 40th law school reunions. I think it would be fair to say that the Congressman and I have both put on the miles since we graduated from law school. But to be honest with you, I think he wears them better. Just for one example, he's got a little more hair than I do. Has Congressman Joe Neguse joined us? I do not see him. How about former Congressman David Skaggs? Yes, he is also a partner at Denton's, Lino's former law firm. I also want to recognize Jackie Cooper Melvin, who is the chief legal counsel, who was the chief legal counsel to Governor Hickenlooper and will also serve Governor Polis, and are members of her staff here. Senior legal counsel to the Governor, Jenna Goldstein. She is here. And deputy legal counsel to the Governor, Martina Hinojosa. Is she here? No. Ms. Cooper-Melmoth, as she has so kindly done on other occasions like this, will offer some remarks about the governor's new appointee a bit later. I'm also told that we may have with us retired Lieutenant Governor Joe Garcia. I do not see him. Former special aide to Governors Bill Ritter and John Hickenlooper, Charlie Garcia. Is Charlie here? Yes, he is. State Representative Alec Garnett, is Representative Garnett here? How about his father, former Boulder District Attorney Stan Garnett? There's former Judge Ruckriegel and the President of the Colorado Bar, John Vaught. We have Jessica Yates, Supreme Court Regulatory Counsel. Is she here? Yes, she is. How about Chief Deputy Regulatory Counsel Margaret Funk? And most importantly for today, perhaps, from the Supreme Court Nominating Commission, I want to recognize Stanton Dodge. Is Mr. Dodge here? On behalf of the Court of Appeals, I wish to thank you, along with all of the members of the commission, for their hard work and excellent selection of nominees to our court. We are also joined, I hope, by Kat Shea, President of the Colorado Women's Bar Association. Is Kat here? No? And last, James McGibney, Honorary Counsel Emeritus to the Republic of Korea. Mr. McGibney? All right, thank you. In addition to Congresswoman DeGette, I want to introduce other members of Leno's family who have come to share their pride and joy at his investiture as a Court of Appeals judge. First, we have Leno's and Congresswoman DeGette's daughters, Dr. Rafaela Lipinsky DeGette and Francesca Lipinsky DeGette. You will hear more from them soon. Other members of Leno's family are here today, too. John Fisher, who is Dr. Lipinsky DeGette's husband, and Leno's brother, Lucian Lipinsky. We have Congresswoman DeGette's sister, Catherine DeGette, her husband, Kerry Gentry, and their children, Patrick and Margaret. Thank you all for being here. Please join me in a round of applause for all of our honored guests. Now we are going to proceed to the official portions of this ceremony. Others will soon speak both more broadly and in more detail on this issue. But I wish to begin by recognizing that Leno is assuming an important and difficult task. Justice William Brennan, who served on the United States Supreme Court, once said that the Constitution will endure as a vital charter of human liberty as long as there are those with the courage to defend it, the vision to interpret it, and the fidelity to live by it. I would have no doubt that Leno is possessed of such courage, such vision, and such fidelity. I would now ask Ms. Cooper-Melmed to briefly introduce us to Governor Hickenlooper's new appointee. And if you would, Ms. Cooper-Melmed, would you please come up to the podium on my left to address the folks in the courtroom?
Chief Judge Bernard, thank you so much. Justices of the court, members of the judiciary, Congresswoman DeGette, thank you so much for being here. It is really a great honor on behalf of former Governor Hickenlooper and Governor Polis to be here today to introduce you to Judge Lipinsky. I want to say first, this vacancy was created by the retirement of the Honorable Alan Loeb, who leaves behind a great legacy in this court. A legacy that includes a great deal of collegiality, of creativity, and that will help shape this court for many years to come. I'll remind you, you were one of the first people I spoke to when I took on the position with Governor Hickenlooper, and it was really a pleasure to get to know you, Judge Loeb, and to hear about what you did with this court. Your leadership was steadfast. You increased access to the courts for all Coloradans. Using technology and bringing the court and its culture into the 21st century. And by doing so, you set an example for all judicial officers. On behalf of the governor, I thank you very much for your years of service and dedication to our state. Judge Bernard, welcome. Thank you for your service, and we in the governor's office stand ready to help you in any way that we can. For this appointment, as with all appointments, we saw really an incredibly impressive slate of candidates, which made this decision especially difficult for the governor. Matt Grove, who I'm looking forward to speaking about next week, Michael Beaver, and of course, Leno Lipinsky, who are all deeply committed to the betterment of the legal community here in Colorado. All have sterling reputations among colleagues, and that even includes their reputation, among their adversaries. The quality of our state courts is what it is today because of the quality of candidates we receive, and I want to join Judge Bernard's thanks to the nominating commission. You really do an incredible job time after time, and we thank you for the very difficult decisions you force us to make. As difficult as this decision was, the governor, former Governor Hickenlooper, was quite pleased to appoint Lino Lipinsky as a judge. And I want to be among the first to congratulate you here today. Lino Lipinsky has a very impressive academic and professional background, as I'm sure you all know. After getting his bachelor's degree from Brown, where he graduated magna cum laude, and his JD from NYU, where he was a member of the New York University Law Review, he went on to have a successful career as a commercial litigator, receiving accolades from publications as one of the best lawyers in America and from Chambers USA. If I were to name even half of his awards and achievements throughout his career, we would be here all day. So I'll leave it to your long service on the court to remind people. However remarkable your professional achievements are, however, you've been a standout among your peers for characteristics that we really can't list in a resume. You first reached out to me a couple of years ago to talk to me about this process. And at the time, I'll confess, I knew very little about you, except, of course, your illustrious spouse, and things that I could learn from Google, right? That you're a partner at Denton's, your educational background, your professional background, and then, of course, there's that name, Lipinsky de Orlov. Those of you who have seen Hamilton might remember when George III first comes onto the stage. That's kind of what I was expecting when I walked in. Wanted to know, who is this guy, Lino Lipinsky de Orlov? And of course, I realized right away what a mistake that mental image was. Instead, I found quite the opposite. I found the warm, affable, humble person who you all, of course, already know and love. In our vetting process, we received countless comments about you and your service and who you are. Of course, they included comments about your legal chops, and I will say, I have never seen such consistent praise from 360 degrees, and that includes lots and lots of members of the federal judiciary, and we all know how picky they can be. They really like you. I think everyone who has worked with Lino has commented on your brilliant legal mind, your incredible ability to produce large quantities of quality legal writing, and also, I wrote this all wrong. What really impresses me the most is your mentorship. Everyone mentioned it. The opportunities, you go out of your way to provide opportunities to younger lawyers to have real, significant legal experience. You are a remarkable mentor, and that's something that everyone in the legal community needs and appreciates, and it's something that really stood out to us. Much like Chief Judge Loeb, you possess an exceptional willingness to go the extra mile. We believe you will make a great addition to this bench, and it will be a pleasure to see what you accomplish. On behalf of Governor Polis, I congratulate you on the beginning of your career as a judge for the Court of Appeals. Thank you so much.
I'm pleased to be able to say that the State Attorney General for the state of Colorado, Phil Weiser, has joined us. Mr. Weiser, there you are. Thank you for your remarks. It is traditional for us next to learn something about each new Court of Appeals judge. Lino, I understand that you have asked your daughters, Dr. Rafaela Lipinsky de Get and Francesca Lipinsky de Get, to do the honors. If the two of you would please be so kind at this time to approach the podium on the left in order to do so.
Chief Judge Bernard, judges of the Court of Appeals, and honored guests. I'm Rafaela.
And I'm Francesca, and we are Judge Lipinsky's daughters. We're thrilled to share this moment with our family, close friends, and all who have had such an impact on our dad's life and career. We could not be more proud of him today. He is a perfect candidate to become a judge, compassionate, patient, and dedicated to the law. Throughout our lives, he has been a constant source of support and encouragement, and we are thrilled to watch him achieve his own dream today. Our father has always been humble, often putting his family's goals before his own. When the seat for the 1st Congressional District opened up, our dad unhesitatingly encouraged our mom to run for the position. He recognized that this was a once-in-a-lifetime career opportunity for her, even though it would require him to make sacrifices. After our mom was elected, he stepped forward to become our primary caregiver when she was working, making school lunches, coordinating after-school schedules, and helping with countless hours of homework. While there is no doubt that he has loved every part of his career, he stepped into the background for a number of years to ensure that our mother was able to pursue her dreams.
During those busy years, our dad became a master of balance. When we lived in DC and my mom would come back to Denver for weekends, my sister and I would spend mornings at work with him. Then in the afternoons, we would go on what we called field trips to museums, national monuments, or anything that Washington, D.C. had to offer. He can make any excursion both fun and very educational, and use these opportunities to teach us civics and instill values of justice, equality, and open-mindedness, values that he will bring to the bench. He spent time helping us to memorize the Pledge of Allegiance when we could barely speak full sentences, and learn the order of the presidents during long backpacking trips, not to mention the many, many lessons on the intricacies of classic rock. Through it all, he taught us the importance of pursuing our own dreams, no matter the scale. Our dad is our biggest advocate in whatever endeavors we pursue, and always takes time out of his busy schedule to help, from editing cover letters and research papers to giving sage career advice.
Though he has only been officially sworn in to protect the Constitution today, our dad has been dedicated to its values for years. He is a strong believer in freedom of speech, justice, and equality. Throughout his life, he volunteered his time to raise up those who do not share his privileges and resources. From his work from the ACLU to volunteering for Legal Night, he taught us that no matter a person's background or beliefs, their lives are worth just as much as our own. He is also a strong believer in hearing both sides of an argument and has been known to play devil's advocate, teaching us to hone our argument and stand by our convictions. This dedication to balance will serve him well in the courthouse, even though it sometimes makes his family crazy at the dinner table.
The values instilled in us by our family are at the forefront of our lives and careers, and are a central reason why I chose to become a primary care doctor and why my sister is applying to law school right now. We are a testament to how his thoughtful dedication to equality and justice permeates his whole life. He has always stood by our sides and protected us, while simultaneously encouraging us to think critically about the surrounding world. Our dad is a phenomenal role model, our biggest cheerleader, and now we could not be more proud to see him enter his next role as judge on the Colorado Court of Appeals.
I am pleased to be able to say that United States District Court Magistrate Kristen Mix has been able to join us. Just raise a hand. Thank you for those lovely remarks. We now proceed to administer the oath of office. Lino has asked Colorado Court of Appeals Judge John Webb to perform that honor. Lino, if you would please join Judge Webb at the lectern.
If any of you wonders why I'm reading this, the reasons are twofold. This is a very personally poignant moment for me because I've known Lino since the early 1980s. And You may recall that Chief Justice Roberts tried to do this from memory at the first Obama inauguration, and that had a sad ending. I, Lino S. Lipinsky de Orlov,
I, Lino S. Lipinsky de Orlov,
do solemnly, sincerely, and truly declare and affirm
I solemnly, sincerely, and truly declare and affirm
that I will support the constitutions of the United States and of the state of Colorado,
that I will support the constitutions of the United States and the state of Colorado,
and will faithfully perform the duties of the office of Judge of the Colorado Court of Appeals,
and will faithfully
perform
perform the duties of the office of Judge of the Colorado Court of Appeals,
upon which I am about to enter.
upon which I'm about to enter.
We now proceed to the robing ceremony. Congresswoman DeGette, Dr. Rafaela Lipinsky DeGette, and Francesca Lipinsky DeGette will assist in robing our new judge. Zippers, man. Judge Matthew Grove was sworn in, as was Lino, in a private ceremony earlier this month so that they could get to work. That makes Judge Grove the most junior judge sitting on the bench today. I ask Judge Grove to escort our newest colleague to the bench.
Thank you.
Judge Lipinsky, we enthusiastically congratulate you on your appointment. I will now ask you to please share with us some of your own thoughts on this occasion.
Thank you, Judge Bernard. I'm honored that all of you came today to celebrate my investiture. I thank each and every one of you, and if I had time, I would thank all of you by name. But I don't have enough time to do that. But there are some people I do want to single out. Judge Bernard, you and I worked together on the Our Courts Colorado Executive Committee about 10 years ago. I've gotten to know you well. I've learned that you're a role model of a judge who's committed to public service, public education, and leadership, and I look forward to serving with you and all of my new colleagues. I'd like to thank all the people who encouraged me to apply for the seat on the Court of Appeals, those who wrote letters on my behalf, and the members of the nominating commission. I think Stanton Dodge may be the only member of the commission who's here, so thank you to Stanton and the other members of the commission. I thank former Governor Hickenlooper for selecting me. Thank you, Jackie, for your kind words and for your role in the process. And thank you, Jenna Goldstein. I'm not sure if Martina is here. I don't think she's here, but I thank her as well. The former governor has had an excellent legal staff, and I'm so glad that Jackie will be staying on to support Governor Polis. Charlie Garcia, you have set records for unretiring to return to public service. You gave me sage advice before my interview. You told me to be calm, cool, and collected. And then during the interview, you asked me the most difficult question that I received that day. Thank you, Charlie. One of my former partners, Gretchen Vanderwerf, was scheduled to be here. I'm not sure if Gretchen made it through the snow. But I know my former Denton's colleagues, Mark Maher and former Congressman David Skaggs, are here. Mark leads the Denver office of Denton's as office managing partner with aplomb, wisdom, and patience. And Mark, I appreciate the years of service as your partner. I got to know David well at Denton's. He and I had a case together. David not only was an extraordinary legislator, but he is truly one of the best appellate advocates, I think, in the United States. My former Washington, D.C. partners, Laura Brzezinski and Jessica Abrahams, stunned me by flying to Denver for today's festivities, and I thank you so much for being here. I enjoyed serving with you, and in our hearts we'll always be partners, and Mark as well. I'd like to recognize some people who aren't here. I don't know if Lucille Boudry and Lisa King are here, but Kane North is here. These are three individuals who made me look good over 22 years. They were my secretaries at McKenna Cuneo, which then became McKenna Long and Aldridge, and then Denton's. I wouldn't be here today if not for Kay and for Lucille and for Lisa. They're the best. I'd like to acknowledge and thank the judges who assisted with my transition. And I could list all of you, but there's not enough time. And I'd like to thank Judge Marquez. He was the first judge who sat in this seat. When the seat was created a number of years ago, he filled it, and then Judge Lichtenstein ably succeeded Judge Marquez. I have such large shoes to fill. I'll be thinking of both of you and your skills and your legacy every day, and I hope I can live up to what you accomplished. I'd like to thank my clerks, Anna Fikar and Charlize Gowdy, who are in the back row. In the past week, we have formed a great legal team, and I think we're going to do great things over the weeks and months ahead. I'd like to thank Polly Brock and Sonia Stromberg from the court, who've made my transition so easy and so smooth. I asked them so many stupid questions, and they answered each one with great patience. And Judge Webb, thank you for swearing me in. We worked together starting in 1983. I know that probably most of the people in the room weren't born in 1983. But Judge Webb's mentorship and encouragement helped me get to this point. I would not be on this court if not for Judge Webb. I'd like to thank my longtime friend Mark Dietrich, who flew in from Washington. Mark's in the front row. Mark and I met when we were 5 years old. We were kindergarten buddies, and we've stayed in touch ever since. I'm so pleased that the family is here today. Diana's sister, Catherine DeGette, Kelly Gentry, Catherine's husband, and then their children, Patrick and Margaret. My brother Lucian made me look good when I talked about law and technology. He's an information technology expert. I would frequently speak on information security and electronic discovery, but until I conferred with him, I had no idea what I was talking about. So thank you. And then Rafaela and Francesca, I don't know what to say. Thank you so much for those remarks. Rafaela encouraged Diana and me to follow our dreams, and I'm not exaggerating. When Diana decided to run for Congress, Rafaela, I think, was 6, and she said, "Mom, you should do it." And when I thought about becoming a judge, she said, "Dad, you encouraged my sister and me to do what was in our hearts. It's your turn." And Rafaela fulfilled her dream by graduating from medical school and is now an internal medicine resident in California. She works at San Francisco General, where she is a physician to an underserved community. John Fisher, Rafaela's husband, has been a member of our family since 2017, and John is the son we never had. And Francesca, my rock and roll daughter, probably the only 20-something who took her 50-something dad to see Vampire Weekend and War on Drugs at the Ogden Theater, and we had a great time. She was my Spanish language interpreter at Legal Night, and I'm so excited that she's going to be following in Diana's and my footsteps and attending law school. And Diana, I can't thank you enough. I think back to law school. We were in our early 20s. To even think that one day you would be a member of Congress and I would be a judge was a fantasy, and that fantasy became a reality. So I'd like to talk for just a few minutes about my journey to the court. My father was born in Rome in 1908. His father was a Polish and Russian artist, and his mother was in Rome to study voice. They weren't Italian, but once they met, they never left the country. My dad grew up in a society where there was no rule of law. He was an artist, he wasn't political, but politics was all around him as he was raised. He told me the story about walking down the street and seeing a political assassination. A government official was shot in front of him, and he said graphically that this man's head fell into a pile of horse manure. And my dad knew that in fascist Italy there would be no justice, because there was no rule of law. There was simply raw power. You didn't question the government, because if you did, there was a good chance your life would be endangered. My father had an uncle named Wacław Lipinsky in Poland. And Wacław was part of the underground. He was part of the resistance against the Nazis. And he was fairly prominent in the late 30s, early 40s. My dad found himself in the Italian army in 1940. And one day, the German officers showed up and began interrogating my dad about his uncle, Wacław. My dad knew if he didn't leave Italy, he would be killed, because his uncle was a Nazi fighter. So my dad, against his father's wishes, escaped from war-torn Italy, arrived in New York in 1940. In the middle of a presidential election, Franklin Roosevelt was running for a third term against Wendell Willkie. And my dad had heard about the rule of law and about justice in the United States, but it didn't strike home until after the election. He told me that after Wendell Willkie lost, he fully expected Willkie to be pulled behind a building and shot by a firing squad, because that's what happened in a fascist society. But my dad suddenly realized, in America, if you lose the election, you can still be a well-respected leader, as Wendell Willkie was. It was an eye-opening experience for him. For years, my dad worked as a freelance artist, and he gave lectures on art history. In 1942, he was borrowing slides. This is before the internet. He borrowed slides to give a talk on art history. He borrowed them from a librarian at the Cleveland Museum of Art, who happened to be my mother, who became my mother. So there was museum in my blood. There were museums in my blood. When I was growing up, my dad was a freelance artist, and my mom worked at the Metropolitan Museum in New York. My father became the curator of exhibits and design at the Museum of the City of New York up on Fifth Avenue when I was born, because with a kid, he needed a steadier income than the income of a freelance artist. When I was 9, he had the good fortune of being named the curator of history at the John Jay Homestead, which is a New York State historic site. It's the retirement home of our first Chief Justice. John Jay lived there for 29 years after he stepped down from public life. Now, I could give a big lecture about John Jay. I won't do that. And all of you know, he was first Chief Justice. He was one of the authors of the Federalist. He negotiated the Jay Treaty, which concluded the hostilities with Great Britain. He was governor of New York. But he was very active with social causes, and he helped draft the law that ended slavery in New York State. He also, as Chief Justice, set some very important precedents. So we all love Alexander Hamilton now, but in 1790, Alexander Hamilton asked the Supreme Court, asked the Chief Justice, for an advisory opinion on a bill in Congress concerning whether the federal government would assume the debts that the states had incurred during the Revolutionary War. And John Jay, I'm sure, said, "Your humble and obedient servant," but he said no. And he set a precedent that our courts follow today. So I was probably the only 9-year-old kid in the country who knew who John Jay was. I couldn't help it. I was surrounded by history. We lived in a wing of the John Jay house. We were surrounded by history. The Jay Library was downstairs from us. Members of the public traipsed through the museum, and they had tours. And we lived in one part that was separated from the public area by a locked door. But I learned so much about American history and the law by being surrounded by it. I realized as a child that the founders of our country succeeded because they were lawyers, because they were trained in the law, and they were trained in the Western legal traditions. That knowledge gave them the skills they needed to build this country. I couldn't help but be inspired to go to law school. Once I graduated from law school and began practicing, I was committed to public service. As you heard, I've done a fair amount of pro bono work. I worked through organizations such as the Faculty of Federal Advocates, the Colorado Judicial Institute, and the Colorado Lawyers Committee Legal Night. At the Faculty of Federal Advocates, I drafted the Civil Pro Bono Panel Initiative, where lawyers sign up in advance to take on pro bono cases. I was committed to attend Legal Night every month if I could. And for those of you who don't know, Legal Night is an opportunity where low-income individuals, many of whom don't speak English, can meet with a lawyer, a volunteer lawyer, who can give them advice on where to get legal assistance. Most people at Legal Night get sent to Colorado Legal Services or Metro Volunteer Lawyers. These are people in our community who don't even know where the courthouse is, have no idea of how to protect their legal rights. It's very sobering, but it's a fact of our legal system. There are Coloradans who don't have access to justice. Now, we've made great progress here in the state of Colorado over the past few years with initiatives like the Sherlock Initiative to help these individuals, many of whom can't find lawyers and represent themselves. It's hard enough to appear in court if you're a lawyer, and these are individuals who don't have one. I can't do Legal Night anymore as a judge, but at one of my last legal nights, I spoke to a young woman who spoke Spanish, a mom, who told me that she had joined custody with her daughter, who was about 11 years old. She had joined custody with her ex-husband. The daughter had been sexually abused by a neighbor and very much needed counseling. The ex-husband refused to approve the counseling. I don't know why, but he said, no, I'm not going to agree that the daughter can receive counseling. And this poor mom said, what do I do? I've got this decree of dissolution of marriage that says I've got to make all medical decisions about my daughter jointly with my ex-husband. I don't even know where to begin. So I referred her to legal services, and I don't know how that story ended. I suspect she tried to represent herself in the courts. I make a number of promises to you today. I promise to follow the law fairly and impartially. I promise to draft clear and concise opinions that are understandable to the public as well as to the legal community. I promise to do my best to keep up with this court's caseload. I will be a supportive and collegial member of the Court of Appeals family. I will treat my colleagues, my clerks, my staff, and the attorneys who appear before us with professionalism, courtesy, and kindness. I will remember that I am treated with respect, not because I'm special or superior, but because of the black robe I wear. It's my position. I know that a reputation is fragile and that lawyers and judges must reaffirm their commitment to the highest principles of ethics every single day. And lastly, I will work with my fellow judges to ensure that all of us who wear black robes live up to the promise of the words carved into this building, liberty and justice for all.
To help celebrate this wonderful moment with our new judge and his family, and with his friends, a reception in Judge Lipinsky's honor will be held immediately following this ceremony. The reception is directly outside of this courtroom in the atrium. You literally cannot miss it. You'll trip over the tables. We invite all of our guests to join our new judge, his family, and the rest of us there. The court will be in recess. Ms. Brock, would you please so announce? For example.